is the author of Over My Head, a memoir of the fight against previous CTAC expansion. She was twice elected president of Citizens Against CTAC Expansion, was the administrative director of the Regional Commission on Airport Affairs, and co-founded the U.S. Citizens Aviation Watch. Ms. Wagner was recently elected to the Superior City Council.
So, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you, Roseanne, for putting it on the agenda for the council. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you about some of the issues that might be important to the community as far as noise, emissions, jet traffic, and flight patterns. Some questions you might have about what's the best thing to do as a way to fight or make your voice known if you're, like, say you're woken at 3 in the morning and you're upset about that. Who do I call? What do I do? How do I fight it? And does it affect my property value? Is it affecting my children's health? How much more should I expect? So, I was the president of the Citizens Against CTAC Expansion, and in our heyday, before the third runway was built in 95, 94, 95, 96, we had about 3,000 members. We had 3 very active members and about 100 people that would show up for meetings. It was the same with the U.S. group that we formed in 1998. We had 24 member organizations with over 1 million members. We'd get about 3 active people and 100 people, that would chime in on newsletters or whatever. But the problem is that aviation emissions are not regulated, they're not controlled, they're not monitored. So if you think that it might be safe to be under the path of a plane, nobody is checking to see if you are or not. So, and I'm here to tell you that you're not, because the ground level impact from an arriving jet plane or even a light aircraft that will emit ground level effects of lead, which is a toxic compound that is found to cause brain damage in children and health effects on very low levels. So general aviation, which you have a lot of here because you're in cross paths for Renton, for Boeing Field, and SeaTac Airport. So these general aviation aircraft that are using aviation gasoline, which is called avgas, are emitting lead. And general aviation airports in this country are the biggest emitter of airborne lead in the world. And there's an estimate that came out of North Carolina University that 20 million children in this country are exposed to airborne lead from general aviation impacts. So that could translate into, for us, children who are injured, but also huge healthcare costs, huge environmental impacts that are not being mitigated, and not being discussed, disclosed, monitored, or controlled. It's the same with jets. Within 10 miles of a flight path, you are expected to experience a ground level impact of things like ultrafine particulate, which is some of the smallest particulate that you'll be exposed to, which is considered to be the most dangerous because it's the deepest down into the lungs. The toxic constituents that are attached to these ultrafine particles that can leach into your body go through the lungs into the bloodstream and then can enter your heart and brain and cause all kinds of long-term effects, including cancers and brain tumors and all kinds of things. And these are expected from these carcinogens at the levels that you are experiencing being exposed to overhead jet traffic here. This is within the 10-mile area that's affected by ground level impact. It's everything from 3,500 feet and below. So past estimates are all the way out to Eastgate and Bellevue, out to Bonnie Lake on the south. So it's a huge area that's being affected in the greater Seattle area. So as a result of my research and understanding that there are huge impacts and there are no agencies that are protecting our public health or our rights or our property, I believe that the best tact that community groups like you can take is, first of all, don't call the noise complaint hotline at the airport, because that again is telling the polluter you're affecting me and they don't care. Well, they may care a little bit, but they're not going to do anything about it because there's no regulatory mechanism making them do anything about it. Call your elected official at the port, which is the Port Commission. The Port Commissioners are elected at large, and they are your representative government. So if you want to change, make sure you're sending your calls and your complaints to the right place. The other thing that we really need is a comprehensive analysis of what the impacts are, which has never been done around any airport in this country, as far as I know. The closest thing that I have to that being done was an independent report that was done by Natural Resources Defense Council in 1996, which found that airport pollution levels for emissions, and I know I'm here to talk about noise also, but I'm not the expert in noise. I'm a self-taught expert in emissions. They found that emissions from airports like LaGuardia and Kennedy and O'Hare rivaled or exceeded the largest polluters in that respective state. Refineries, incinerators, and steel mills. The airport's emission inventories were at or greater than those pollution sources. Now those are regulated, controlled, and monitored by local air districts and EPA and Puget Sound, like here, Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, Department of Ecology, whereas airport emissions are not monitored or controlled, and they're also not disclosed. So they had to do quite a bit of digging. And then another independent report on controlling airport pollution, which this was from Northeast states for coordinated air use management, and this is, you know, Midwest, like Chicago, Maryland, Boston area, finding the same sort of thing that in the, for instance, one of the findings from this was that in the period 1970 to 1998, airport emissions increased by 133% compared to automobiles and all other industry in that same time period, increasing by 3% or less. So now SeaTac wants to expand. They want to double their passenger operations, and they want to increase cargo operations by 30%. So that means at least a doubling of the impacts over your homes, over your communities. You're up pretty high in elevation, so you experience a lot of noise and intrusion. So I think the best alternative is to seek relief from the state, looking for an alternative airport site, because as they expand SeaTac, they're expanding all over the country, and these are only going to continue to grow. SeaTac is a constrained site with very little acreage and no room to expand. So what this is called is shoehorning in, which, you know, it's going to be billions of dollars just to add gates or add this expansion they want to add. You can build a new airport for that cost. So a lot of your local city councils, your representatives at the legislative level, lobby the state, the EPA and the other agencies to let them know that you're concerned about the long-term effects to your health and environment, that we need a better solution to our long-term air transportation needs in the state, and partner with Aviation Justice if you want. You can go on to aviationjustice.org. It's the group that I'm involved with right now, and you can subscribe online. So that's it. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
In your self-taught training about emissions,
Yes.
did you look over here at the Beacon Hill Weather Station up near the lawn bowling? What do the emission measurements?
You're some of the highest in the region. You've always been. You have some of the
What
highest.
does the data show?
Yeah, the data shows that you're a hot spot for high emission levels. You've got upwind or downwind from sources near the Duwamish. You've got a freeway nearby, and you've got flight paths for 3 airports. So, for instance, in 1994, one of the issues that I used to get more monitoring near SeaTac was the fact that we'd never had it. And Beacon Hill was always the place where the saturation bands would drive through and say, oh, Beacon Hill's the
What does
highest.
the data show?
So,
Can you give us some numbers?
what do you want to know?
Is there benzene in our air? What kind of concentration? What kind of lead concentration?
Okay, so I don't know what current monitoring is here for lead. I do know that air toxics are monitored by NAMS and TAMS. That's not a local resource. What you're getting monitored for is what's regulated by the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So you have SO2, NO2, particulate. You do have lead, but I don't know what your measurements are. And I don't know if there's lead monitoring here. But I do know that EPA did get funding to do some lead monitoring around some general aviation airports around here, but not in this area locally. So for instance, NO2 doesn't exceed the federal standard, but you are the highest spot in the region besides SeaTac Airport, according to the saturation studies and monitoring.
Higher concentrations?
The highest annual average, yes. And there's only one monitor. So they're basing that on saturation studies and then annual monitoring for NO2. So what the band will do is drive all over the region and look for real high levels of NO2, and what they're looking for is ozone, because NO2 and along with hydrocarbons create ozone, and the ozone standard is strict enough that we've almost violated it many times over the last 10 or 15 years, and we are in maintenance, or we have been in maintenance, so we need to maintain that ozone, that strict ozone level, and not go above it. But aircraft are a major source of NO. So, and also hydrocarbons. So they're pumping an awful lot of ozone precursors into the environment all the time. But Beacon Hill is the highest according to the saturation studies, and according to one annual study we had at SeaTac, we are slightly higher than you.
Do the new airplanes, like the 787, produce less emissions?
Well, they are designed to burn less fuel, but the problem is that it's the same fuel. So you always have trade-offs. If the engine burns hotter, it might reduce carbon monoxide, but it's going to produce higher levels of nitrogen oxides. So there's trade-offs.
So we have two questions standing. There's one here and then Roger.
Hi, Debbie. I appreciate your activism. The last energy crunch in 2008, I know the airlines really suffered. There was many that were almost on the verge of going bankrupt, some that did. And now we're using this dirtier fossil fuels out of Alberta and the tar sands in North Dakota.
Right.
What are your thoughts on revitalizing our rail transportation or improving our transportation system so that we're
That's
not
a
so
great
heavily
question.
reliant?
I love that question because I'm a member of Allport, Washington.
Yes.
And I've been advocating high-speed rail link between Vancouver and Portland for this corridor. And I recently actually had correspondence from Dow Constantine that he also agrees with that. So, since SeaTac Airport is the greatest producer of greenhouse gas emissions in the county, believe it or not, 22% of the total. So if you take all cars and all other transportation, you've got one little airport here producing 22% of the county's greenhouse gas emissions. If you would take those short hops and those high energy intensive use flights to Spokane or to Portland or to Vancouver, those short hops, which are extremely, energy intensive, like I said, they're also highly polluting because the takeoff mode of that operation is the biggest producing of emissions and noise. So you put that into high-speed rail, you could reduce the demand that's putting the pressure on this little tiny constrained airport and have alternatives that are more sustainable, far more sustainable into the future, and give people an opportunity for an integrated transportation system like the models they have in Europe. So I'm very much in favor of that. I've been pushing for that. I've been working on that very hard for a long, long time. So yeah, I'd love to see that move forward.
Roger?
I've read that there's an effort underway to take tetraethyl lead out of avgas and operate the general aviation on something like
Right, they do have.
station. Are they making significant advances there?
There is an alternative unleaded gas called MoGas, but there is no requirement that EPA is putting on the air carriers to use it. So avgas is, the price is not that big of a deal between the two. So, but EPA won't regulate.
Is it just the fuel, or do the engines have to be modified? Except the way that car engines have to be modified with the hard valve seats.
Yeah, my understanding is there's some concern about safety issues, and I don't know the expense, but I do think that it would be better for overall public health to spend the money and spare the children. That's more important. And all other industry and polluters have had to do it. These guys are getting a free ride. And it's because America's in love with this need for speed, and our aviation is a sweetheart. It escaped all scrutiny and all regulation and control, and that is not a safe thing for our public health.
I'm sorry, we're behind schedule. But you're
Thank you very much.
Are you gonna stay for questions or anything? Afterwards? Or you gonna
Yeah, I do need to go.
go? Okay, so I wrote aviationjustice.org.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.